Good evening, folks. Welcome to Reaching Out with Eddie. Well, we had a slight delay. We had to update our computers and everything. But, folks, we just going to jump right in here. Today, my guest is Weston Lindeman and, of course, Richard Lofton. And you know the Dice Man is here. Weston, how have you been doing?
Doing pretty good. It's good to be back. It's been a little while. I've been busy on the campaign trail, and now here we are 4 weeks out from the general election.
So just kind of like tell the peoples about your platform, some of the things that you're going to do, some of the things that you have been doing. I got to ask you this. There's a lot of lawsuits in the city of Meridian. Is that one of the things that you do? Is that something that would you order your administration to settle those lawsuits? Just go ahead on, let's settle these lawsuits and just be done with it.
I think that depends. One thing that I've disagreed with the city's insurance company on is their rush to settle sometimes, because I faced a lawsuit a few years ago with an attorney that I was criticizing his work. He had a contract with the city. The contract had cost overruns to where they kept coming back to the city for more and more money, and we never got the end result of the project that he was supposed to be doing. So I criticized him in a very public way to hopefully get what we had paid for or our money back. And we went through this court process. He never would sit for depositions. All this time and money spent, and the city's insurance company settled. Since then, as a result of that message that they sent to city employees, if I have criticized somebody in a public way, now they know we can settle for $10,000 or $15,000 just by filing a lawsuit.
Yeah.
So I think that sets a bad precedent. If we let employees or otherwise know that if I'm demanding accountability as mayor.
But let me be a little bit more specific.
Okay.
Such as Rita Jacks, Anthony Ball, Thomas Van just filed lawsuits against City of Meridian. I don't know whether you know that or not, but they were served today.
Okay.
I'm the one that did the process serving. I took it there, and Ms. Stacey Williams signed for both lawsuits suing the City of Meridian, the governing authority, which is you a member of, and also the Meridian Police Department. I also took a copy of that lawsuit to the Meridian Police Department for Chief Reed, who would not come out, but wanted to know why, and I said why, and so it allowed for Lieutenant Gale, the person that you're suing, that you serve them, you're supposed to actually serve them.
Right.
But if they refuse service,
Was he in his office?
Yeah, he was there, but he
really?
wouldn't come out.
Wow.
He wanted to know why I'm there.
Interesting. He claims he spends 1 hour a week at his desk in his office.
Yeah, he would not come out, but I can tell you Lieutenant Gale was very nice and very professional.
Yeah. Okay.
He signed for it, and he took it, and I know that by this time, Chris Reed, and I can tell you a lawsuit such as what Rita Jacks did, and Thomas Van and Anthony Ball, are those lawsuits that would you order your administration to settle those?
Clarify
and then
that.
mine, also my lawsuit. I would have trumped up charges against me. Would you order your police department to drop those charges, to go ahead on and settle? Because I have given the city a Manel letter, you know what that is, an intent to sue letter.
Right.
And so...
so let me clarify then. In cases where I believe we're cleaning up the mess of the previous administration and we've clearly done something wrong, there's no need to pay these legal fees and drag this battle out. Let's settle, give the people the compensation that they deserve. But in instances where I've demanded accountability, because on day one, some of these officers, if they haven't already quit, they're going to be fired, and then they're going to try to come back at the city and file a wrongful termination suit because they're civil service protected. And then we'll have to go to court, and I'll have to show the evidence of why I fired them because of the corruption that's going on in that department. And to settle with them would be, obviously a mistake. So we don't want to send the message that anybody who sues can settle. But in cases where the city has wronged people, I think it's prudent for the city taxpayers that we go ahead and settle without wasting so much time and money.
Well, I got to ask another question about the Meridian Police Department. Would you order that, such as Levi Gibbs and Gary Barber? Gary Barber was, in my opinion, murdered by the Meridian Police Department. So was Gary Barber, and Levi Gibbs was beaten by them. And folks, in order to cover it up, Alex Lee and Matthew Spears and the current chief took a case that he's never been arrested by the feds before, and they took it to the feds and charged him with a felon with a handgun, a state case. But because they had beat him and they wanted to hide him and bury him in the system, they took it and turned it. Would you investigate a case like that? And
yeah, absolutely. When I first pursued these questions a year ago, the Levi Gibbs situation in particular, that came just in the moments after the national situation with George Floyd, I mean, these two things were very closely related in the minds of many people in Meridian because of the timeline. The George Floyd incident happened last year, I believe early in the summer, and then later that year, after we had already had the Breathe Through Me protests and demonstrations, then the Levi Gibbs incident came to the forefront, although that had happened, I think, earlier in the year, like last March. But in the pursuit of the evidence and looking at the dash cam footage and all of that, we never did get to any conclusion because we had people, someone who is now elevated to the position of chief, who would sit there and lie to city council members directly to their face saying there were no body cams and, all the excuses we heard. Well, this chief has recently gone on TV and said that he was pursuing criminal and civil litigation against me for endangering his officers by accusing them of these things. And I just thought that was ridiculous, that his interest is in pursuing charges against people who try to hold him and his officers accountable, and not any interest in holding his officers accountable. So his priorities are all messed up. But rest assured, once elected, we're gonna clean up the department, and that starts with changing who the chief is and getting rid of some of those key people. A now former police captain who apparently has been demoted, or should be demoted, based on a recent incident that occurred at Meridian Police Department.
You're talking William Burnell.
That's correct. And a couple of others who will most definitely be fired given their association with criminal activity within the department. And that's the sort of thing that we're just not going to allow. But your question about investigating those police brutality incidents, obviously with Gary Barber, it's another thing I try to get answers on. I don't expect we'll hear anything about that from the police chief or anyone at the police station for quite some time, because they know as well as I do that there's such a backlog with autopsies and getting MBI to say anything on the record and actually report their findings. It may be a year or 18 months before they even respond. And quite frankly, I don't place a lot of confidence in MBI or the Attorney General's office because of the incident with Howard Cole that I went through last October. I tried to give the Public Integrity Division at the AG's office all the documentation I had recorded, that I had received. They were working remotely at the time due to the coronavirus pandemic and could not even open email attachments. They made no effort to communicate with me or to follow up with me on any of these things. It's like they didn't care. MBI, they had someone, an investigator there, who once they heard I was from Meridian, they literally laughed and said they didn't want anything to do with the city of Meridian, and they transferred my call. So these are the state agencies that we have tasked with investigating and holding accountable police departments. We can't allow the responsibility to fall on people who are clearly not interested in doing the job. It's going to be up to the mayor and the city council to ensure that the police chief and the members of the police department are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And when they drop the ball, we've got to hold them accountable. And I think that starts with the zero tolerance policy for these types of things.
I agree with you. What I was told today is that the current chief is promoting people circumventing the process, promoting people. Is that something that you look at instead of promoting people that, believe it or not, white folks over blacks again? And one of the things that as I watched WTOK today, I watched you and the other mayoral candidates speak, and one of the things that's been suggested is that if Mr. Smith wins, that he's going to evaluate the department's head. Do you have anything to say about that?
Well, it's true. That's what he said today, that he's going to have to evaluate the departments first. Look, if you run on the platform of we can do better, clearly the people we have in those departments are not doing the job that they're supposed to be doing already. Otherwise, there'd be no need for us to put our names on the ballot, and we'd be re-electing Percy Bland right now. I can tell you from 4 years on the city council, from everything I've dealt with, I mean, if you go back to the early days of 2018, I'm less than 1 year onto the city council. What are the news headlines? I'm arguing with the city's chief administrative officer over why they have personnel who's a licensed arborist put off in an office somewhere doing nothing all day while they contract out with a landscape architect to do the downtown landscaping. So they're costing the taxpayers money while they have personnel that they're not utilizing who could be doing that stuff instead, simply because they don't like them or they've got some personal issue with them.
We definitely need to get away from that.
Yeah, and so over the course of the first 2 years I was on the council, it all led to this point where I had such an understanding of what was going on in these departments, I even published a report called Cost Analysis of Bad Management Decisions. And what this showed was that there were hundreds of thousands of dollars being wasted every year just based on the fact that we had higher level employees, so like a director of operations in Parks and Recreation, acting as a cashier at Lakeview Golf Course. So that's a $55,000 a year job, director of operations, but their actual day-to-day duties because of the mismanagement was basically a $25,000 a year job. So that's a lot of wasted money.
Sure is.
Not the employee's fault, it's the management.
Gotta ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have bodyguards?
No.
Will you have a city vehicle? Maybe, maybe not.
Well, they have a whole fleet of city vehicles. I don't know why I would. I mean, are we going to sell them? I don't know. I haven't thought about this. This isn't really high on the priority
But you're definitely not
list.
going to have a bodyguard.
I haven't had one as a city council person, even amidst death threats and everything else I've had to deal with. So I don't see a need for that as mayor.
You can call me out.
Yeah,
You know I got
hey,
your back.
We'll deal with it.
I had your back
okay?
before, remember?
Exactly, and I do remember quite well. I tried to put together a video recently to share on Facebook the details of everything that happened last October because I think it's still a lingering question for some people. But I decided against it unless I get directly asked on TV or otherwise in a very public way to explain that whole situation. I'm just going to leave it alone for now. But we're going to resolve that in July when I take office. And I can tell you right now, for the chief and the other people who've participated in covering up the crimes that have taken place within that department, I'm going to pursue everything I can to the fullest extent of the law to make sure that justice is served one way or another. And that will include the people at the police department who have deliberately prevented any sort of investigation into Howard Cole and his criminal activities, and anybody associated with that. We're going to deal with it.
Yeah, I like that. I got to say this, is that I don't think I ever talked to you, but I've alluded to it a lot here and maybe went into detail a little bit, but the charges against Loretta Allen and myself, they're trumped up charges. I was told, and I don't want to give the person's name, but I was told by someone at the state office that that as early as August of last year or July, somebody from the Meridian Police Department sent the same video to the AG's office, and they told him that it was not child pornography. But then you had Rochester Anderson that made it his like a vendetta, and not even with the domestic. I got charged with domestic violence. He's got his fingerprint on that. Everything that I have charged with me and Loretta Allen, Rochester Anderson has his fingerprint on it, and he's been promoted recently to something else after saying he's going to quit. But I think that was just a ruse in order to get the promotion. But you have so many people at the Meridian Police Department, in my opinion, that should not be in the position that they're in. Yeah. And I hope that not only you, if Jimmy Smith is elected, he would not be doing the citizenry of this city a favor if he keep the same department heads there and he don't go in there and ask for an investigation.
Yep.
Because look at Lieutenant Jack, look at Ant Ball, look at Chris Scott, look at Thomas Van, and he's still there.
Yep.
A lot of them, instead of suing, they just like, such as Chris Scott just left. So you're losing a lot of talent.
I've talked to people all over the city, going door to door, who've told me stories about how even once they got the new cameras up in their neighborhood, they would have a shooting incident and they'd call the police out there and never any follow-up. They don't ever look at the video footage. They don't follow up with the citizens. They can't follow up on any of these crimes that get committed against the people of the city, but when it comes to political issues, the police department is all over it, like with what you've been faced with and what I've dealt with. And
it's just literally destroyed my campaign. Two Belt, that's my story. Destroyed me. I didn't get but 2 votes, and I would have got more than that. I had a lot of baggage to carry. I mean, to be charged with receiving, sending, and possession of child pornography is nothing worse than that. Yep. People like that get killed in prison.
Yep.
You know, that's like the worst thing ever. And also, you want to tell the people about your platform and tell them about your ideas and coming events.
Okay. So, you know, what I've been doing over the past 4 years has largely been seen as an oversight or investigative type role in the city council, but really all the things that I've done have led to positive improvements. So you go back to 2018, where the city used to circumvent the bid process to sell buildings and enter into contracts. We've stopped doing those things because of the oversight role I played early on in making sure the administration did things the right way. That saves the taxpayers money, that improves the outcomes anytime we enter into a contract to make sure we have professionals doing things the right way. When you look at my investigations into timesheets, not only did that lead to 4 indictments of Meridian police officers, and we expect justice on that front as well, aside from that pursuit, it's led to enhancing the city's payroll process to make sure that we are modernized on an electronic system and no longer keeping paper timesheets. So I think too often we've forgotten in the initial noise of the things I've pointed out or the light that I've shown on some of these issues, that in doing so, we've now improved the way we do business at City Hall as a result. Moving on, we've kept such a close watch on the city's budget that we've gone from $1.2 million in our cash reserve since 2017 when I first got on the city council to now over $8 million in cash reserves. That's from the work that we've been doing. The council has recognized that I'm apparently pretty good at budgets, and so they've put me on the audit selection committee twice. They adopted my version of the 2020 budget, and that budget came right after I finally convinced them all of the fact that we had ended now our second budget year in a row with $4 million left over. So while the mayor was asking for tax increases, we had $4 million that wasn't even being spent. So it's things like that that I've been doing. We talked about the management earlier, and in 2020 I kind of shifted my focus to the police department because I was asked to be on the selection committee that eventually selected Lieutenant Jack to be the next chief. However, the mayor went in a different direction. 4 police chiefs later, we got the current one that we have, but in July we will have a new chief, and I expect that will be Lieutenant Rita Jack. So we'll call her Chief Jack then. But
let me be the second person to say Chief Jacks.
There you go.
Chief Jacks, how are you doing today?
And I decided to run last August when I presented a plan to pave these streets because in 30 years, the city's never had a budget for paving streets. Instead, what they do is every 4 or 5 years, they borrow money, usually in an election year, and that allows them to pave streets for just the 1 year. Then they got to pay back debt payments over 15 to 20 years, and the roads don't even last that long. So the county does the same thing, and they always have. Now, the reason they do that is largely because those bond attorneys get 1% of the total amount that's borrowed as their fee, and then they give campaign contributions to certain politicians who supported the borrowing to begin with. So they've got that little system going.
Y'all hear that, folks?
It's all there on the campaign finance
Let me
reports
give you
that
props
tells
on
the
that.
story.
Y'all hear this, folks? Do you hear this man speak? This is a young man speaking about things that I didn't even know anything about. And I like to say I'm the fifth wheel in the family. But you listen to this man is obviously qualified.
And so when the council rejected my plan to spend $5.5 million each year, that's each year, not just for 1 year, to pave streets continually without raising any taxes and without cutting any existing services. When they rejected that and WTOK asked me back in August what I thought about that, I said, I guess I have to run for mayor because these people, they're not listening to me.
Yeah.
And they're willing to follow the current mayor off a cliff. So that's what started this campaign. I guess it was really a long time coming because of the work I've been doing over the past 4 years. I think it's uniquely prepared me for this job because my opponent, while he seems to recognize some of the issues and he talks about them, cleaning up the streets, paving the streets, that sort of thing, what he has in experience is very different than what I have in experience. Some of the issues we're dealing with today are things that are the result of decisions that were made 15 and 20 years ago, back when my opponent was in office. Why we don't have jobs today, why we have a declining population today. 2005, 2006, there was a deal that would supposedly bring jobs to the city of Meridian. It was a company called Loblolly Industries. They were going to build wood products out of loblolly trees. And the county, very familiar name, was the board president at the time. He's now running for mayor.
And what was that?
Mr. Smith,
Jimmy Smith,
to be clear.
Was the board president.
He was the board president, and they authorized the borrowing of $10 million, and there's his signature on the paperwork. And in the blank next to Loblolly Industries, where they're supposed to sign the lease agreement for this industrial site, that $10 million of investment was going into the site. You better believe the attorneys got paid, one in particular named Rick Berry. And the result of that project is we'll continue making debt payments until the year 2026, and we get a pile of dirt in return because there's nothing out there today. Now, who to blame exactly? Hard to say, but the bottom line is, even 4 years ago, I would not have made the mistake of borrowing $10 million without having a lease signed.
Right.
Most people wouldn't make that mistake. Hard to believe it was just a mistake. That's the kind of thing that has set this city back for a long time, and this county.
And we'll continue to do so until we have the right peoples in office, someone such as yourself.
I think so. You can be so good at bonded borrowing in this state that you get rewarded with a job at a company like Government Consultants or Butler Snow. There was a story in, I think it was Mississippi Today, one of those investigative journalism sites at the state level. They did a story a year or two ago about how Butler Snow and Government Consultants have the entire market in the state of Mississippi for bonded borrowing. Anytime a city, county, or the state of Mississippi borrows money, they use those two firms. One to do the attorney paperwork and the other to do the financial advising.
Okay.
My opponent was so proficient at making sure the county continued to borrow money when they didn't need to that he was rewarded with a government consultant's job upon losing his supervisor's seat. So,
with this name of this company,
Government Consultants.
Yeah.
And we still do business with them today. They have the racket on the city, not just the city and the county, but the entire state of Mississippi as far as the bonded borrowing goes. But I bring that up to remind people that Meridian and its problems did not just begin 8 years ago. We have a long history of this type of behavior, a long history of prioritizing special interest over the interest of the citizens of Meridian. And that's going to be the key difference in the two administrations that people have an opportunity to choose from. That's why I've been all over the city talking to people door to door, and that is why I'm best positioned to move this city forward.
It's a person I'm going to want you to go and see, and the reason I want you to go and see him is because my tool belt gave me this person name. He really needs to talk to you, and I know it'll get you invoked, but I think you should go and talk to this person because he look at you as that young old boy, that little young boy.
Sure.
And this is a white GOP guy, right?
Okay.
Somebody that's 80 years old.
Yeah.
So I definitely think you should talk to him because I think this is a person of influence.
Yeah.
And so, tool belt. I'm going to give Weston Linderman your phone numbers. Weston going to call you up, and you can introduce him to that man if you don't mind.
There we go.
Yeah. Because, like, people, I just got to say this, is that y'all know I helped Jimmy Smith, and I did, and I want the best candidate to win. If I was to say that I'm going to straddle the fence or something like that, that wouldn't be fair or anything like that. I want Mr. Smith to come here, and I want him to sit where you're sitting at right now and talk to the people so that not only a person such as myself can make an informed choice, but you out there can make an informed choice about who you choose. This is very serious. I met today with Ike Brown and Gary Naylor, and I forgot the young lady's name, but we met at Joe's place. And I listened to Ike Brown talking. Ike Brown is old school politician, old school Democrat, meaning that he want to give a person a chance without so much of knowing what it is that they're going to do, and don't want to really hold, in my opinion, unless I misunderstood him, that we should not hold our candidates accountable. I understand what Dice Man's saying now. What we got to do is we got to consolidate, and we got to make the Democratic Party come to us and not go to it. We got to make the Republican Party come to us and not go to it. But I said this to say this is that, folks, that I'm a new kind of Democrat. I want to know what it is. I had them laughing because I said my vote was for sale, and I told Weston that earlier today. It's not that my vote is for sale because that's illegal. I just want to know what I'm getting. This young man here is explaining to me what I'm going to get. Now, Jimmy, you know I love you now, and I have a lot of respect for you and your family. But there's no way I can vote for you if you're going to keep those department heads and you got to evaluate them. Because why are you running in if you got to evaluate? Hell, a person can evaluate them and give them a damn promotion or demotion. Simple as that. You got anything to say, Richard?
Yeah, I want to say To me, I look at this city as a dying city. It's because we're not building a city to be strong in righteousness. When you get illegal activity in your city, it will die because the people are not working, they don't have jobs. Nobody's trying to build the city up no more. The only thing they want to do is take, take, take. When you keep taking from me, I'm broke. You got to give me a job. And you got to get what's right.
It's absolutely crucial, and I don't know how this is going to happen or if it'll happen, but we've got to have a debate in this general election. Everything so far has been a forum. We had a forum this morning in front of the Realtors Association. I thought, given the time constraints, they picked good questions, but the problem is without a debate, there's no opportunity for rebuttal. And here's what happens when we're talking about opportunity for the city and when we're talking about how people have taken and not really given back or contributed in any real way. The question was asked about economic development and declining population, and I had an opportunity to answer first and talked about how we can market the city in a better way instead of wasting money on marketing contracts that don't produce any real fruits and tens of thousands of dollars on local radio ads and calling that marketing when it's really political favors.
Right.
We could instead be hiring the world's leading social media marketer and put a real brand on this city and get our name in front of investors and industry leaders who will then choose to locate here, because we have things like the cleanest water in the country, actually. The lowest level of what they call PFAs, which is just a name for pollutants that are like microplastics and stuff that's in water. And we're not marketing that to companies that make products with water being a main ingredient. It's things like that. And so where a debate comes in is this. I get through detailing in only a 2-minute answer, which is not a whole lot of time, to discuss very complex issues and important solutions. How we're going to market the city and some of the ways we're going to bring businesses that range from 30 to 60 employees, and how the EMBDC should be a chamber of commerce and not an economic recruiter, because they have a conflict of interest given that they're all business leaders themselves. Why would they want someone to come in that's going to be a competitive business with their business? And my opponent gets his 2 minutes next and proceeds to explain how it's my fault because on the council we've only given the EMBDC $100,000 and they need more investment than that.
That's $100,000 too much because they haven't done anything, they have not produced. And so if this is what we're going to get...
Evidently he believes they need more money. And he even went on to say how when he was on the Board of Supervisors they first established the EMBDC. And so without an opportunity to rebuttal, that's it. That's what you hear at a forum.
Well, you have an opportunity now, so rebuttal.
Well, sure, yeah. Well, that is what I would say as a rebuttal. They don't need more money, that we need to put the resources behind someone with a proven record of success. There are companies that do what they call lead generation, and that is they give you leads on economic development. So they say to the mayor and not to some business guy who has a competing interest, here is a guy who needs to relocate his business, go talk to him. And then I go and either call him or hop on a plane and go meet with him or whatever it takes to get in front of that guy and convince him that Meridian is worth investing in.
Well, we got to talk about education. You keep saying that, but you hadn't addressed education now.
Let's talk about education.
If they don't have an educated workforce.
That's true.
Educated workforce. You got to address that.
Yep, there are 3 things that we can do to...
Hold up. I'm sorry. Not only education for our children, but also activities for not just a selected few.
Yep.
All of our children, especially those that are in Western Garden, Eastern Garden, and we're going to call from the lower socioeconomic strata.
Let's go through the list. So we've known for a while that it's important to invest in vocational learning trades, and we've given that as an alternative to college to students. An equally important thing that we should be investing resources into is STEM training. So if you imagine high school education in particular, and even 8th grade through 12th grade, as 3 tracks. College prep, college and ACT prep, where that's the focus. And if you prepare for the ACT, by the way, you're going to pass the standardized test that the state requires. So that's one track. Vocational learning a trade is another track. And then STEM is the 3rd track, because that's really, if not more important than trades, it's equally important these days, I think. Now we have a school that, instead of letting Lamar brag about how they had 20 students with a 29 ACT score, we've invested in making sure 100 students have a 29 ACT score. Okay, all of a sudden now we have a school district that people want to be a part of.
That's right.
And you can point to a low grade from the state standards, but when you point to how many students we have prepared for college and the amount of scholarships that they get each year because of their ACT scores. Now you get those students who their parents live inside the city of Meridian, but they've been paying for Lamar or whatever other school, homeschooling. Now they want to send their kids to Meridian High because their ACT score is going to go up and they can be a part of something that's going to get them into a better college and a better future. Vocational training, of course, that's important. That there's a real need for that in the next 10 to 20 years just because of the lack of emphasis that's been on that for people my age coming through the school system. They always told us we had to go to college to be successful. So there was a lot of kids
that don't want to go to college.
Yeah, between my age and maybe 40 years old that were always told they had to go to college, and so there was a lack of people in trades as a result of that. So now the next generation could be very trade oriented. And then the STEM component is important, obviously, because that's where a lot of the future jobs are going to be.
Yeah.
Now, aside from that, there are these things called magnet schools. Now, I'm not talking about charter schools.
I understand.
A magnet school would be something like what they have in Columbus, a math and science school, or what they have in Tuscaloosa or Birmingham, an art school. But what about a STEM magnet school, something that's focused on mostly the science and technology piece?
How would you go about doing that when the school board hires the superintendent, and then you got teacher salary, and again you have a lot of our children because of the school confinement, the parents are not prepared to tutor them or anything. It's just so many things that creates a dire need in our communities.
I talked to Dr. Carter about the possibility of a magnet school about 3 years ago, and her position on it was it's a good idea, but it would probably have to come to a voter referendum where the voters initiate an increase in their sales tax. In return, they get this brand new school.
But we have the money already. We have a lottery here. We have medical marijuana that's coming, and we already have the casino.
Now,
so again, that points to legislation and leadership.
Yep. There's a lot of money out there. There's a lot of money that we're about to get from the federal government, from the American Rescue Plan and the Biden administration's efforts to improve infrastructure funding, as well as their broader understanding of what infrastructure means, not just roads and bridges, but actual people and communities. Aside from that, revisiting our 16th section land leases. This is something that never gets talked about, but there has been...
Explain to the people what that is. I know it is, but
so the Crossroads Shopping Center, for example, is on school district land. And when it was leased, I think it's one of those 99-year leases. It was basically given away to this, I think the company was called Garfunkel Properties or something like that. There may have been another company before Garfunkel. But anyways, the land changed hands in a very cheap way, and they locked in this 99-year lease. But all of those leases have a review period built in to where after like 20 years, you can come back and reappraise and change the contract as a result.
Own the Meridian Police Department now.
We do now. Finally, yeah.
How much did it cost?
I don't have the specifics. That was a very, very complicated deal.
Was something that you think the city could not have gotten a good deal with that?
No.
To me, it was a poor decision.
Now that we've purchased it, it's a better deal. We were paying, quadruple payments basically, and that was because the Berry administration made some mistakes, and their business partners were less than ideal, and so 12 years later, we're dealing with it. But 16th section land, school district land,
basically owned by the school.
Giving an opportunity to reappraise the value of that land, because now the Crossroads Shopping Center has a whole lot more on it than dirt and trees. So obviously the value is increased. The school district can get a better deal for that lease. The businesses that are located there, the property owner is going to pay it because they're making tons of money off of all of it.
So how about we open up these phone lines? Because I know...
Yeah, I could go on forever.
No, it ain't so much of that. I don't want Dice to get whooped.
We get a break.
Yeah, we'll take a break and then we'll come back. We're going to take a break. Dice, take us to break. Folks, welcome back. Folks, I tell you, it's been a eventful evening. Just Weston Linderman here and Richard. Weston, we're going to open up the phone line, Dice, and we're going to read your comments and take your comments. But I like to say this, is that I appreciate you coming here. Robert Ray will be here Thursday. I know that's going to be eventful. I'm inviting Jimmy Smith to come here. I think that he should come here because I don't know but I would assume that if you invite me somewhere and I come, but then if, in other words, I want whoever gonna be the mayor, I want them to be a mayor for all the people. I don't want a mayor that's gonna go and meet with certain people and won't meet with everybody else.
I've sought out every opportunity possible to get in front of groups of people and speak. I've been turned down by some organizations who are more, I guess, what I think of as catering to the old money establishment types.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, my opponent has been invited to those organizations to speak. So I would say to the voters, think about where the candidates spend their time and who they're talking to. That tells you a lot about who they plan to serve.
To Weidman's, to the, is it the women's of the GOP? Is that the name of it?
Oh, no, I didn't get one of those invitations.
Oh, okay. Now, anything else you want to tell the people?
Well,
how they could contact you if they want to help?
Sure, yeah. Okay, my phone number is 601-692-5396. That's my cell phone. I've had that public for the past 4 years. I plan on keeping that public as mayor. You can go to my website, westonformayor.com. Particularly go to the blog because it's pretty detailed. However, I haven't updated it in a while, and so it's not exhaustive, although it's about 4,000 words and can keep you busy reading for a little while. There is more. You can go on my Facebook page, both my regular Weston Lindeman, Facebook account and my page, Weston for Mayor, and watch some of those videos there where I've answered questions and Q&As in front of an audience for 2 hours or more. I mean, there's a whole lot to discuss. There's so many issues that we face, and the solutions aren't exactly 2-minute answers. And so a lot of these opportunities to speak at forums and other things, they're not really enough to get into all of the issues. But that leads me to why we need a debate. And 4 years ago when I ran for city council, my opponent did the same thing. He would not debate me. But I'm going to try to make sure that we at least get the opportunity. And I'm sure Mr. Ray would agree to debate. So what I'm going to do is I'll send a letter to Mr. Smith and Robert Ray and let them know that I'd like to do a debate at whatever time works for the three of us. And, we don't have to wait on WTOK or anyone else to step up because they're not going to do it. They're just going to do a forum, a pre-recorded forum for an hour, as if that's enough time. And, not knocking them necessarily because they've got to make their decision on how to conduct their own business. But as far as me, I think that the issues at hand are of such importance that if we're not going to debate them for, an hour and a half, 2 hours, well, what are we doing? I mean, this is important enough that any candidate ought to be willing to debate for an hour and a half to 2 hours. And so I'll be challenging my opponents to that real soon.
I can remember when Craig Houston ran for supervisor, he wanted to debate Wayman Newell, and Wayman Newell would not debate him. I think that Craig took issue with that.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I mean, the forums are good because you can tell the people what you want to do, but the problem is where we disagree. So if I go first and speak and say, here's what I want to do, and then my opponent speaks second and he says, well, here's what I'm going to do, and I know that something that he said is wrong or not true or why my idea is better, and I don't get a chance to rebut that.
You better do like Donald Trump. Donald Trump said, well, before I answer that question, I'm finna answer what he just said. You better do what Donald Trump does. Well, it's kind of rude, but you get your point. But hey, they let him do it.
It's true.
They let him do it.
Yeah,
sometimes you have to break protocol, especially if they say something that's not true.
Yeah, that's true.
That's why y'all don't want me to be your mayor. I'm going to snap. Two best to go in on the snap. Then, Dice, you want to read something? Dice, did you open up the phone lines?
They open.
You hear that, Lolo? You hear that, Miss Franklin?
All right, so let's see what we got here. Hold on just a second, guys. All right, we have Ellen Franklin says, good evening, peeps.
Good evening.
So, Miss Franklin, Corderas Holt says, good evening, Uncle Gray and the guys.
What's up, nephew? I got to tell you this, Cordero. Your mama, your dad, and your brother did not vote in the last election. Got their name, you make sure they do vote.
That's where those lists come in handy. You can check it out, who voted.
Yeah. Go ahead, Carla. You on the podcast?
What up, y'all?
I knew it. What up, Lo?
What up? What up, Weston?
Hey, how's it going?
Check this out. They had a Civil Service Commissioner meeting today. How about Chris Reed got approved to hire 2 captains and assistant police chief.
I saw
Now,
that.
mind you now, it's not going to be a written exam. It's going to be an oral exam.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Wesley Litterman, you know I respect you. You know I ain't got no filter. I just say what's on my mind.
Mm-hmm.
You know what they going to do. They going to put all the white folks in those positions and look over the black experienced people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reason why Thomas Van got a lawsuit on the city now.
That's right.
Because they constantly skipping over black folks that got way much more experience than no white officer down there.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? All this time now,
Mm-hmm.
those positions been vacant. Look how long Jay Arrington been gone.
Oh, yeah.
Look how long John Griffin been gone.
Mm-hmm.
Look how long they have no assistant chief.
Right.
And all of a sudden now, Percy Bland sell out Negro ass is about to exit office. Now today, Chris Reed going before the Civil Service Commissioner to get those 3 positions filled in before Percy exit office.
Yeah.
Now you know exactly what they doing.
Mm-hmm. And I take issue with that. The good news is the mayor has the authority to rescind any appointment like that within a year. So even though they have time on their way out the door to make these appointments and they can get their buddies in as assistant chief and a couple of captain positions, I can rescind all of those appointments if I choose as mayor. So,
Would you choose to do so?
well, it depends on who they hire,
That's
but
right.
I expect that Lolo is correct. They're
I
going to
don't think they
choose.
should do that at all. I don't
Yeah,
think they should
I don't
ever
think
do
they
that.
should either.
Especially when, why should you do that? We done rejected you in your administration.
Yeah, I mean, 2 council meetings ago, I told Chris Reed in public during my council comments that I would fire him in July, and now he's going to go and hire 2 captains and a police chief.
We need to hear you say that, Jimmy Smith. We need to hear you say that you'll fire him in July. We don't need to hear you say you're going to evaluate the department heads.
What
Shit,
Yeah.
I lose my vote.
Yeah.
If he
But
gonna
take
keep-
this out though.
what
But take
these
this
guys
out,
are?
though.
What
I
these,
understand that
Let
you
us
can
speak.
rescind those positions.
Mhm.
But here's the thing. Just imagine how many people you would lose within
Yeah.
a year time. Because those folks is not putting up with that bullshit Chris
Yeah.
Reed and Percy Bland is doing.
Well, we
done
won't-
lost
yeah.
stellar officer, outstanding officer,
Mhm.
because the bullshit Chris Reed and Percy Bland doing.
You're
This
right.
city
Yeah.
can't suffer any longer. Look, take this out.
Mhm.
You said you've been talking to people, and they talk about the cameras.
Mhm.
People not getting back to them concerning the cameras
Right.
or whatnot. Check this out. You
Mhm.
ain't got enough damn officer on MPD force right now because they constantly quitting.
Right.
They are constantly quitting. So, so Jimmy Smith saying that he will have to evaluate the people.
Mhm.
That's what he said.
That's what he said. Yep. He's going to have to
Okay,
evaluate the
name of the
departments.
slogan is what? We can do better.
Right.
What good is evaluating the people? If you can do better, it's something that he's seen that was going on right.
Yeah.
So get rid of their ass off the rim.
Yep.
Ain't no need to keep them
I
down.
agree. Yeah,
I mean,
it-
what good is to change the administration and keep the same corrupted ass department
That's
here?
right. It's not really changing the administration if you keep all the administrative
That's
people
right.
in place.
You'll be keeping perfect. If we keep any one of those department heads, it's just like keeping perfect.
Right.
Because they loyal to perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let me
You're
ask you
exactly
this way.
right.
What do you feel? How do you feel about the statement that Robert Ray made today?
Wow. Okay.
Mississippi has some
So
dumb kids.
right before we came on the air here, I saw that WTOK covered that story, and I was a little surprised that they did because as we were there in the forum, nobody really seemed to pay much attention to what to what the guy was saying because it was so ridiculous. But you know, it's hard to tell with Mr. Ray if he is coming from a genuine place of concern about an issue when he says things like that, or if he's just being funny. It's not clear to me.
I can tell you this. I worked with Mr. Ray for a few years. That's him.
Yeah,
That's him.
I figured.
That's
Yeah.
the way he is.
Well,
You know, if he wants you to know something,
Mhm.
you ain't gonna have to second guess yourself because he gonna let you know what's on his mind.
yeah, I believe
That's
that.
him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if the statement were Meridian Public Schools has room for improvement, obviously that would be an understatement. But to say that Meridian has the dumbest kids in Mississippi or whatever it was he said,
that's a hasty generalization.
I mean, it's just not true.
But
And
Mr. Ray, we're gonna ask you to explain that Thursday, y'all. He gonna be on Thursday, and you can call in low and ask him.
I'm sure he'll give a colorful response to that question.
Thanks, Lo, for calling in.
Uh-huh.
It's something you want to say, Richard?
what these guys are trying to do, they're trying to create a problem where you got to work harder to clean it up.
Yeah.
That's all they do.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, luckily though, there throughout the city, whether it's the state laws that govern the authority that we have as mayor or city council, or the civil service rules that we've put in place that govern how employees get hired and fired. Luckily, there is that mechanism for rescinding appointments.
Right.
And
I think y'all need to look at y'all civil service board regulations again, and I think something should be put in there once an administration go out.
Yep.
They cannot make any last minute changes. Basically, make them a lame duck, but they can't do anything.
I agree. Yep.
And not only that, one of the things that I would suggest any mayor coming in to tell board members such as those that are there that you want their resignation, that they need to go. Even the school board people, they need to resign. People on the housing need to resign because you got Ron Turner doesn't do anything. He doesn't even come in, but just collecting a check. And so there's so many things because there's a lot of grants out there that can do things in public housing, and they're not doing any of that.
Yep.
And I sure hope that I hope that most qualified person get in every position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, people have asked me who are my department heads going to be, and outside of the city judge, who I'm not going to name live on the air because I
almost did it, but I ain't going to do it.
I don't have his permission to do so, but just know it won't be Robbie Jones.
You hear that, Robbie? You might as well go and leave now because you is fired.
There you have it.
Chris Reed, you know you fired.
And the police chief position, I do have someone for both of those spots. The other positions,
can I just wishful think? I can't wishful think either.
You can.
I want to talk about this. Who I wish would be the judge. I wish the judge would be Joseph Denson, of course, and I wish that Lieutenant Rita Jacks would be the chief of police. I think if she was the chief of police and had Joseph Denson as judge, man, it'll clean up that part of the city. It'll clean itself up. Even the streets will get done too, Bill.
I like your thinking, definitely.
Yeah.
The other positions will be filled by people who are competent and have a track record of success, and that's really the requirement because
it's two more people that I know that are highly qualified.
Okay.
Kathy Barfield. I'm always talking about Kathy. They'll probably think that she's paying me to do this, but to me, she's been kind of like treated like a Lieutenant Jacks. That she has not been rewarded for her abilities and her intelligence. I think someone such as her would be very good as a with the city, or even as an educator, such as what they call a superintendent. I think that'll be real good. And the only way you can get things like that done, you're gonna have to ask the current. But look, I want you to go now. Y'all hear that, board members? We want you to go now, especially civil service. We want you to go now. Dice, man, anything you want to rebut to that before I...
Well, the board members will get a letter from me asking for their resignation. That's a guarantee.
Y'all hear that, folks?
Yep, so it's coming. Now, for the way we're going to fill these department head positions, though, because a lot of people have asked me about this, like I said, I don't have people for all those positions already figured out because I'm not doing it for political purposes.
That's
the people that we assign to these positions. On June 8th, we decide who the next mayor is. June 9th, if I was chosen on June 8th, I will be calling City Hall to make sure that we're advertising for all department head positions so that we can go ahead and take applications and I can begin the interview process.
And one of the things you said before, and I just want you to reiterate, that you would look at department heads that perhaps got their job through nepotism or not most qualified person in that position, and salary caps too.
So there's something that has kind of flown under the radar, and Civil Service Commission, they've been part of the problem here. I brought it to their attention in the summer of 2019 when Kermit Kendrick first became the city attorney. That we had people in acting positions below the department head level. So this would be people who are, your number 2 or number 3 position in public works, parks and rec, people like that who had been elevated as a result of cronyism, basically, to a higher paying job, even though they didn't have the qualifications, or in some instances weren't even expected to do the job. I mean, we had one guy who was pretty high up in public works, didn't even have a desk or a computer, which were obviously 2 things that were needed for the job. But they didn't expect him to do the job. It was just a reward for, political support, basically.
And we need to get away from that.
But the good news is, those positions, they're acting positions, they expire after 90 days. And so I, as a council person, have not had the ability to go through all of the civil service records. I've tried. I went through 3 years of records, but then tried to go to the city attorney and to the Civil Service Commission and say, y'all look at these acting appointments. A lot of them have expired, so you've got people who HR is paying for an acting position a higher salary, and they're not even legally in that position.
That's right.
So we can deal with that sort of thing once there's an administration in place that wants to deal with it. But from my position on the council, I've just been frustrated with that whole situation. So we could replace a lot of the middle management that are in those acting positions now if we choose to, and then of course the department heads is the main
I'd like
focus.
to say this too, is that it's like, say, if we elect Jimmy Smith, then we'll be getting the same thing. If we bring in new city council individuals, females or male, and they continue on doing what the previous city council person did, then again we'll be stagnant. So I hope that Mrs. Walker and whomever is elected, Joseph Norwood Jr., I don't think he will, and I don't think she will. I hope that they come in and support the next mayor, the next mayor of the city. If it happened to be Jimmy and Jimmy want to keep those department heads, it's still up to you to confirm them. Am I right or wrong?
That's correct, and they could very well say no.
That's right. Say no. Don't give it. We cannot. We want change.
Don't make that mistake. That's for sure. The voters spoke in the primary and in the runoff that a majority of people want something different.
That's
so
right.
don't give them the same thing that we've had.
That's right. And I gotta say this too. A lot of the city employees, especially department head, drive vehicles home. Don't live in the city. A lot of those people, such as the chief of police and people like Howard Cole, and if I'm not mistaken, Darrell Thomas does not live inside the city. They ride in vehicles home. So these people are asking us to continue to take care of people that don't give a damn about this city.
Right.
So there needs to be some kind of policy.
Let me solve this issue real quick, because we will not have department heads who don't live inside the city.
Yeah, that's good. That is great.
And
what about taking vehicles home?
Yeah, if there's a legitimate reason for it,
right,
okay, but I don't know what most of these people's excuses
It's
are.
one thing I got to address is the police cars driving at high rates of speed. I see it all the time. And just this past week, high-speed chase ended up out in the county, and a vehicle ended up flipping or something like that, just chasing the car. And in Hoover, they won't do that. Once it gets to a certain speed, the police officer back down and let them go, because you got the tag. You can always get them later. There's no reason for them to do that.
I don't know what I don't know what they're trained to do in that situation, but I trust that Chief Jack is going to make sure that her officers know what they're supposed to do in those situations, and that they're not going to abuse their resources, because that's a real problem throughout this country. Is the militarization of police has allowed for people with fewer and fewer qualifications to assume roles that have the resources of an army, and and it's caused so many problems.
Like what you just said.
You know, the only way we correct that is with a police chief and the willpower to make a difference there. I mean, it's not, these things aren't unsolvable. That's for sure.
Dice.
Okay. Stacy Dixon says, "Hello, everybody. May God continue to bless and keep y'all safe. Much love." Hey, Stacy. Emery Howe says, "Weston deserves to be the next mayor of Meridian. He has given his all since he was 19. That's important to notice. He took that seat because he cares about his city, and now is running for mayor."
Let me say this, because I've heard several comments like that, and I really appreciate people saying things like that. They don't give these things away, that's for sure. You definitely have to fight for these positions. If I don't get it, I expect I'll win based on the strategy, the team that I've had. You know, I've had a lot of great volunteers, a lot of people who, on June 8th, when people wake up, how many do you think, let me get sidetracked here for a second, how many do you think are going to wake up and enthusiastically go up and vote for our campaign and Meridian's future, and how many are going to go up and say, oh, I've got to rush down to the polls to vote for Jimmy Smith? I just don't see the enthusiasm for my opponent, and I think that that's one advantage that we really have. But let's just play devil's advocate real quick and say, what if June 9th I wake up and I'm not going to be the next mayor of Meridian? I am 24 years old and expect to be around for a while. I'm not leaving Meridian. I'm committed to this cause, and in some capacity, I'm going to continue to work for the people of Meridian.
Thank you.
That's the plan.
Thank you. So, Tubal, let me paraphrase that. So, what Mr. Linderman just said is that if he don't win 4 years from now, and we get something we don't like, he most certainly will. I mean, if he don't win in a few days, a few weeks from now, 4 years from now, he will. All right, Dice.
Okay. All right. Cordera's Hope says, that's what I'm saying. I'm trying to settle with Billy Solly. I was assaulted by 6 guys and I was placed on lockdown 1 hour out. Wow. He's been trying to fight the case since 2019. My rights was violated. I was neglected. Treatment houses. Okay, I'm sorry. It's kind of broken.
But let me just, you don't have to continue that. Nephew, I want to say this to you is that Weston Linderman is running for mayor of Meridian and Solly is with the county. Something totally different.
But still, it highlights an important issue because one of the things I've been most amazed by is campaigning in some neighborhoods, talking to people, and there's certain voters who only recognize me from the police issues I've battled over the past year, and they all have so many stories, firsthand accounts, things that they can tell me from their experience that they've seen police officers do, their dealings with police officers in a negative way, and hearing all of those stories. I mean, I've got to follow up with the guy that's just reminded me who detailed to me how he had all sorts of evidence of police corruption and wanted to get it to me. And this is a guy who no one has ever knocked on his door and asked him what he thought about the Meridian Police Department, much less given him an opportunity to do something about it. So the number of people out there in the city of Meridian and in Lauderdale County who feel that they've been wronged, and many have been legitimately wronged by police officers, is staggering, and we can do something about it. It just doesn't get enough attention.
Lieutenant Jacks, what's all that problem? I know. And folks, I definitely believe in rewarding experience, education, professionalism. She has all 3.
Checked all those boxes. So let's just call her Chief Jack.
Yep, Chief Jacks.
That's it.
Dice.
Okay. Go down a little bit. Alicia Taylor says, absolutely loving this interview. She also says, please, Mr. Smith, tell us more than picking up trash.
That's what's been so frustrating about this whole campaign, because I guess even still after 4 years on the city council, sometimes I'm pretty idealistic and I'm thinking how it should be and not the way it really is.
Right.
And back in August when I announced, I thought, okay, I've announced way in advance. Now the only people who are going to put their names on the ballot is someone who really has something to bring to the table, because they know I'm going to bring it.
Right.
And then by the end of January, there were 7 names on the ballot. And I thought, okay, this can only make the conversation a little bit noisier, but surely there's going to be people actually saying things that are making sense and having a real discussion about the issues. And 4 or 5 months later, I'm still waiting on somebody to say something that I can debate them with. And that's okay. If they don't ever say anything, that's fine, but I think it'll be evident to the voters.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dice.
All right. Emery Howe says trade schools should be talked about more, and how much Mississippi charges people for annual registration.
I don't know the answer to that, but I know the idea about those 3 tiers. They have something similar to that in Alabama, based on the child's intellect and their intellect, their desires.
Interest is.
So you get basically about, I think at McCullough, where my children went to school, that they had 3 different high school diplomas based on what you just said.
Yep, there's a whole variety.
Everybody graduated and they did what they wanted to do.
Yeah. Yep, and we have, the state regulations that make it to where they have to pass certain subject area tests. That's fine. Even within the existing curriculum, we can add things to that to make the school system so much better.
Okay. All right. Eddie Crosby.
What's up, Eddie?
Says Weston for mayor of 2021.
It's a big supporter right there. I really appreciate
Eddie, and he's a friend of mine too. Hey, Eddie.
It's the supporters who get a paycheck and hand me $50, and then next time they get paid, they hand me another $50.
Yeah.
That's the real support right there, because I don't have the people who will write a check for $5,000 and expect something in return. I don't want those people on my team, and there's a reason why they haven't called me and said, hey, I've got a check for you, and there's a reason why I haven't called them to set up a meeting. But it's the people who are the grassroots supporters that have really made this campaign a success.
Yeah, and that's good.
Okay. Johnny Magruder says, I want my nephew to be educated out of there. Bring God in the school, educate them on their history. God was black, read it, straight-haired, white God, nor was Adam and Eve white, but did you know?
Well, let me address that. I don't even think any of that's important, and I'm not an advocate of having God in the classroom.
Yeah.
I'm more with science, math, and again, dressing those 3 tiers that you talked about. You know, some going to go to college, but some just want to trade. And I think we need to do that. And some students are not going to learn as fast as others. Yeah. But for us putting God in the classroom and whatever color Jesus was or Moses, all that's irrelevant.
Yeah, true. But on the point of maybe the way that history's kind of been revised and the way they tell the story in history classes, I think we could probably do a better job of telling Meridian's story and Mississippi's history.
Is it 1696 that they're arguing about now? That's the year slavery came into America, 1696.
You know, I haven't followed that whole argument too closely, so I don't know the details.
It doesn't matter when slaves came to America, but it's a lot that black folks have contributed to not only this country but other countries, and that should be addressed in all history books. If you're going to tell it, you know, instead of making a person feel like me, when I went to school, the only time I'm talking about black people, they was talking we were slaves.
Yeah.
And see, all these contributions that black folks have done, I think that's what the person comment about. But that's a different story. We're talking about Western Dunham for mayor.
Yeah. Well, it's still important because it's true. You hear like throughout. I mean,
true politicians. Yeah. It's important. You hear him too, Bell.
Pick any time though in a history class, in any like era, whether it's Industrial Revolution or colonial era, they highlight too often just the white stories.
The Europeans. Yeah, that's why it's called history. It's his story to tell.
Yeah.
History.
Yeah. Well, you got it there. That's right. But there are ways we can improve that.
Somebody calling in. Lolo finna calling you on the podcast.
Mr. Hope, I had to call back.
I knew it.
Now look, let me turn the page just for a minute.
Go ahead.
2016, I had a brother-in-law that was arrested. What happened was his girlfriend at the time, April Thornhill, went flying out there on Old Highway 80 out past Western Garden. And my brother-in-law was across the street in the trailer park across from Cliffspan Component next to the Russell out there on Old Highway 80.
Okay.
Someone came and knocked on the door and told him, I think that's your girlfriend don't crash her car down the street there, out past Western Garden. So he goes out there and saw that she don't hit a tree or whatnot, and she was in bad shape, and he taking her out the car and rushed her to the ER now. He not knowing that her 3-year-old child was inside the vehicle because the airbag was deployed all over the car. The car was in the mess. I guess he's a junkie or whatnot. They clean her car out. So they end up, Meridian Police Department end up charging him with the child's death because the child ended up dying, right? Mind you now, this wasn't his child. Somebody failed to get the child medical attention. This was 2016 now.
Yeah.
But they eventually turned around and charged her with her child's death. She was DUI. What about this? The same broad done killed her boyfriend down there in Clark County. Her bond is $50,000. The reason why I'm bringing it to your attention, it was MPD wrongfully charged my nephew for this white female, April Thornhill, white child death, when he was the one that went and saved her. She was in bad shape. He didn't even know her 3-year-old child was inside the vehicle. So these are the type of things that MPD do.
Yeah.
Up on this black administration. Now, this girl done went out there and killed somebody else. And how about Clark County got her bond at $50,000 for killing this black man, intentionally killing this black man? Hit him and left him in the middle of the highway.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, thanks for calling in, Lo. And that's the reason why we need Chief Jacks. Chief Jacks going to straighten all that up, Lo. You already know.
It's going to take some time to get used to saying chief. We've said lieutenant for so long. It's just a habit.
Should have been saying Captain Jacks.
But
that's easy to say, Captain Jacks.
Yep.
Because you know Captain Jack Sparrow on, what's that, Pirates of the Caribbean.
That is
One of my
easy to
favorite
remember.
movies. Yeah, that is Captain Jackson.
Yeah, very different characters.
Yeah,
those
yeah,
two,
very
but still.
definitely.
We
Yeah,
should have
but
been
Chief
saying
Jackson.
assistant chief by
Yeah,
now.
yeah, I should have. You're right. Dice.
Okay. And last but not least, Emery Howell says, I see police using their lights to speed through traffic, run stop signs, and then they turn them off all the time.
Yeah.
I guess they've gotten comfortable not being supervised. A lot of them have. I mean, you can find them in empty parking lots. They don't know it, but I know some of their hiding spots too. Don't get too comfortable because we're going to be out looking for you. And if you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, you're going to be in some serious trouble. So.
That's right. I think that if anybody's with the Meridian Police Department or the city of Meridian under this administration, instead of promoting peoples, I think that you all should just go ahead on and lead, but understand that you can. I am a testament, a living testament to this. Should I start saying Mayor Linderman?
We're getting close. Four
Linderman.
weeks from today.
I'm a living testament of you cannot outrun the long arm of the law. Because they have came after me. You can believe that. They have. But this stuff recently just went. Anything you want to say to the people?
I want to say, from what I hear today, I'm very happy to be here because when a person brings you what they know about facts, history, and what they know about what's going on, and they try to solve it, those are the kind of people that you want in position to do what's right.
Thank you, Richard.
Yes, sir.
Weston, anything you want to say to the people?
Thanks for the opportunity to come back here and speak to everybody. I think we'll try to do this once more before the election, and hopefully we'll have a debate, and maybe we can get you involved in that somehow, or I don't know what the format will be yet, but, do anything you can to help spread the word. People at home listening, this has been a real grassroots campaign, and just, if anything, if you know somebody whose mind is made up, maybe ask them to give it another consideration. I find that works. If you just ask people to be open-minded, then they may surprise you. And I think there will be a whole lot of surprised people on June 8th.
And you are who?
Weston Lindeman, running for mayor. You'll see me on the ballot, independent candidate for mayor, June 8th.
And you want them to vote for you? You just want to know who you is, or you want them to vote for you?
Well, hopefully, if they've listened to any of this so far, I don't even need to ask anymore. I'm just kidding. Yes, please vote for me June 8th for the next mayor of Meridian.
I want to thank you guys for listening, all of you females. I want to thank you, Kim up in Indiana, and Mike Moore somewhere on the road somewhere, and you Two Belt and Two Belt family. From the mayor.
From Bell.
Oh yeah, bro, Sam.
Now don't forget, I need
too,
I need to call Tool Belt so I can get the name of that guy who I need to meet with.
Yeah, you need to talk to Tool Belt because Tool Belt would probably could help you out a whole lot.
Okay.
Probably could.
All right.
Belt, yeah.
All right. Let's
Tool
make it
Belt,
happen.
Tool Belt makes some interesting comments.
I believe it.
All right. I want to thank you guys for watching the podcast. See you Thursday. Robert Ray will be here. Dice, take her home.